I'm at a point in my life where I own things like a bottle brush and a smaller bottle brush and this chainmail scrubber thing, but I still don't have a great way to organize them. These little magnetic hooks technically do the job, but they don't look great, and I have to fiddle with them when they move or loosen over time. So I designed something simple to replace them. A block of wood with hooks on the front and magnets on the back so I can stick that to the side of my fridge instead. And while normally I prefer dark woods like walnut or slightly darker walnut, I want this thing to match my cabinets. And my cabinets look like this, which is to say ugly. But now it's my sacred duty to figure out how to match them. And to answer that question, we'll have to go back to when this place was renovated. The decade of my birth, the peak of human civilization according to the machines in the Matrix, the end of history itself, the 1990s. According to my research, this is what's commonly known as honey oak. To get this color, you first use red oak, which looks almost exactly like white oak except with a warmer undertone, then stain it to get this golden brown color. This style of wood was popular from the late 80s until the early 2000s, but popular doesn't quite cover just how ubiquitous it really was. Red oaks grow basically everywhere in America that has trees, and they can reach 20 feet tall in a single decade. This makes it one of the cheapest hardwoods in the country, so it was used for floors and stairs and cabinets and crown molding, and people stained it darker because, I don't know, it was the 80s, they had bad taste. I went looking for info on which one of the 5,000 commercially available stain colors I should use to match this look, and I didn't find a definitive answer. But I did find a lot of people just hating on honey oak and red oak more generally. They say it's overused, hideous, ugly, splintery, dimensionally unstable, reminiscent of dorm room furniture, and one person even compared it to Nickelback. Undeterred by this, I removed one of my kitchen cabinet doors so I'd have a reference to match a stain to, and brought it with me to my dad's wood shop where the first order of business is digging through this shelf of old finishes. Now, I didn't just find one stain in here, I found 4. And this is pretty promising because one is just called honey maple. Could it be so simple? But golden pecan also looks and sounds pretty similar to what I'm going for. At any rate, first I'll need some red oak. So I went to the store, grabbed a board, got my first red oak splinter that stayed in my hand for 2 weeks, and cut much more of it than I really needed. I mean, it's red oak, we just talked about how cheap it is. Then, instead of making 2 different blocks, I first set up a stain test to see which one was the best match for my cabinets. So I cut off a piece of the board, then cut that into 6 little squares in case I needed to do more tests, labeled them A through F, and sanded them lightly with 220 grit sandpaper. Piece A is going to be honey maple, which has gone bad somehow. Maybe that has something to do with it being stored in a banged up container for at least 10 years, I don't know. I tested it anyway, waited 3 minutes according to the instructions, then wiped it off. Piece B is golden pecan, apply the stain, wait 3 minutes again, wipe it off. Piece C, provincial, apply, wait 3 minutes, off. Piece D, red oak, 3 minutes, done. And after all that, none of them are really a perfect match. Test piece B is the closest, which was the golden pecan, but it's not quite dark enough. But good news, I applied most of these stains wrong. I read the can for the honey maple stain and assumed that all 4 stains would need to sit for the same amount of time. But the honey maple is a gel stain, while the other stains are wood finishes, and apparently that means those have to sit for 5 to 15 minutes. And it doesn't mean that it's actually a finish, because you still have to add a clear coat on top of it after you're done staining. I mean, sure. Okay. I guess. So I used those 2 extra test pieces to see what 5 minutes and 10 minutes with the golden pecan stain look like, and they're the same. But they look exactly like the cabinet doors, so that's good. I mean, the test pieces are a little bit shinier, and the grain of the wood isn't as close together, but the color's very close, maybe just a smidge lighter. That's fine though, because a coat of finish will darken it a bit more. So now it's time to actually make the thing. I bought this little hook strip, and the first step is to figure out where on the board I actually want to place it. I'm not really loving much of the grain, and you see here I considered trying to put it on the edge for a denser, more quarter-sawn look, but there wasn't enough thickness there, so I chose here. Next, I have to lay out where the magnets go. I wanted to get smaller rare earth magnets, but the store only had these big ceramic ones, so I was worried about them getting in the way of the screws for the hook strip. So I measured both, and the screws and the magnets are both less than 1/4 inch thick, and the board is 3/4 of an inch thick, so there's plenty of room. So I mark where I want to cut, cross-cut it with the radial arm saw, then cut that block in half lengthwise on the table saw. That way I have 2 of them, just in case I mess this first one up somehow. Naturally, I want the hook strip to be centered, and the easiest way to find the center of a rectangle is to draw a line from each corner. I don't know if I learned about this in shop class or drawing class, but if you didn't know, now you do. I place the hook strip just above the center and then mark the screw holes there before double checking with the calipers to make sure it's well centered. After that, I outline spots for the magnets on the back, drill holes for them with a Forstner bit, and epoxy them in. This epoxy was kinda old, according to my dad, and I don't know how old that means it is, but it took a lot longer than the instructions said to set up, so there's that. For the screws, I measured them with a caliper to find out what drill bit to use, then drilled about half the depth so I wouldn't lose my marks as I sanded the block up to 220 grit to prepare it for staining. I also wanted to round the edges a bit, so I tried a utility knife and a scraper, but ultimately just sanded those too. Turns out red oak really is annoying to work with hand tools. I used the golden pecan stain and let it sit for 8 minutes, leaving me with this. And it looks pretty close. There is a lot of contrast in it though. I'm not a fan of how dark these grain pores are compared to these lighter parts, especially since the grain is much closer together on my kitchen cabinet. But maybe the final finish will fix that somewhat. I did 2 coats of this polyurethane, then buffed it with a bit of steel wool I found at the bottom of a milk crate in the shop, screwed in the hook strip, and that's it. Mission accomplished. Back in my kitchen, I put the cabinet door back on my cabinets, replaced the individual magnet hooks with the block I made, and... So it stays up if I unscrew the magnets from the other hooks and just place them underneath to support it, but that somehow feels even worse than what I started with. Also, these hooks are pretty close together, which makes the whole thing feel pretty crowded. So I bought a larger hook strip, which will let me spread things out a bit, and I finally got some rare earth magnets too. So now it's just the same process as before. I find a place to cut out a block, trying to get the closest grain possible because of the contrast issue from the last one. Cross-cut that on the radial arm saw, then find a center line and put it through the table saw. The first version was a little thick, so this time I planed it down a bit on the joiner, then also took it to the belt sander to soften the edges a bit more. Hand tools were unfortunately not much of an option because I tried that with the first block to mediocre results. This is what the block looks like when I'm done sanding the second version, and I do think it looks a lot better. It's more elegant, and it kind of matches the profile of my cabinets too. So I mark and pre-drill the holes for the screws to mount the hook strip, same as before, and now it's time to figure out the magnets. Being rare earth magnets, these things are deceptively strong for their size. Deceptively strong for their size. And I want to make sure I add enough of them that the hook strip doesn't slide down the fridge like the last one. But if they're too close together, they might pop out of their holes while I'm waiting for the epoxy to set. So this is what I went with for now. If I need more, I left space to drill 1 extra hole on each side for another 2 magnets, because I really don't want to have to make a third one of these. And this time, instead of that expired epoxy, I'm using this E6000 adhesive. Now you may be wondering, like I did when I first grabbed this stuff, what is it? And the answer is I honestly don't know. But it must be good, because just look at all those warnings. Keep out of reach of children, use only in well-ventilated area, keep away from heat, sparks, and open flame, do not mix with other chemicals, do not get on skin or clothing, do not breathe fumes, do not smoke, and does that say subscribe? I mean, guess it can't hurt. Now that we've done that, it's time to stain this with the golden pecan. I open up the stain and stir it instead of shaking. Turns out the instructions also said not to do that because of air bubbles. Let it sit for 8 minutes, wiped it off. Then I thought it still looked a little light, so I put a little more on. After that, I put on 1 coat of polyurethane instead of 2 like before, and 24 entire hours later, it's finally dry. Buff it with the steel wool, screw the hook strip back in, back to the apartment, and just look at it. It looks great on the fridge. I mean, it's no walnut, but the wood matches my cabinets, my cleaning tools are much more organized, and all at 0 risk to my security deposit. So after all that, do I hate red oak as much as the woodworking subreddit seems to? Is it the Nickelback of wood choices? I mean, maybe. That splinter I got stayed in my finger for literally 2 weeks, but sometimes aesthetic consistency is more important than getting to use your favorite wood species. If you've ever moved into an apartment, you know what it's like to have that one nice rug or couch that somebody's parents wanted to get rid of, and sure, it doesn't match with anything else, but what are you gonna do, spend $5 million on a couch? Because I assume that's what couches cost? My point is, cultivating your home's aesthetic is part of adulthood, but it gets expensive fast. And this project was basically a quick, cheap upgrade that made my apartment feel a lot more cohesive, even if I'm contractually forbidden from changing my ugly 80s cabinets. All this to say, if I ever move to a place with walnut cabinets or somehow manage to buy my own place and then also manage to afford real walnut cabinets, well, I guess then I can make a third one.